Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us once again for Health Professional Radio. We'll be speaking with Matthew D'Onofrio, co-founder, president, and COO of Evoke Pharma. Evoke Pharma is a specialty pharmaceutical company focused on the treatment of gastrointestinal diseases. He's going to talk about GIMOTI, the first and only FDA-approved nasal formulation of metoclopramide that is commercially available and specifically designed to deliver a non-oral dose. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Matthew D'Onofrio. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, give us a brief look into your professional background and then talk about Evoke Pharma and its mission, if you would.
Absolutely. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry now over 30 years, working for larger, much larger firms, Eli Lilly and Company and other smaller firms in more of the biotech space, and then founded Evoke Pharma with Dave Gagne about 16 years ago, with our goal of developing GIMOTI to help treat patients with diabetic gastroparesis.
Acute and recurrent diabetic gastroparesis, or DGP. What is this disorder and who does it affect?
Yeah, it's a stomach disorder where a person's stomach isn't empty normally. So you and I, when we eat a meal, about 4 or 5 hours later, your stomach has emptied its contents into your intestines, and that's where you absorb nutrition and hydration. Unfortunately, there are people that have an inability to do this, and that's typically caused by nerve damage. So the stomach may retain food, liquids, and medications for extended periods of time, sometimes a few extra hours, sometimes a few extra days. And you can imagine the collection of different issues that this creates. There's symptoms, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, bloating, early satiety, and other issues. And then, of course, there's just malnutrition and other concerns that go along with this. This typically happens in persons that have diabetes. It's the most common area that this comes from, but it can happen for other persons that maybe have had certain infectious diseases or abdominal surgery and other kinds of things. It affects around, we believe, 2 million, 3 million people in the United States that are currently being treated.
Now, you mentioned GIMOTI. Describe this product and tell us who would most benefit from GIMOTI. Yeah,
so the irony of all this is that because the stomach or the disease in itself retains medications, doesn't allow medications to be predictably absorbed, we developed this nasal delivery of metoclopramide specifically to bypass the GI tract to avoid that unpredictable issue that goes along with pill treatments. There is only one approved molecule in the United States to treat this, and it's called metoclopramide, better known as Reglan. It's been on the market since about 1980. And it can be very effective for people if they can get it on board in terms of a dose into the circulatory system. So we designed GIMOTI specifically to avoid the unpredictable issues that go along with that. Patients do also vomit up their medications quite often, unfortunately, or have difficulty swallowing them, which is another common symptom and issue that goes along with this. So GIMOTI is, we believe, the most specifically designed treatment to help these persons with these problems.
Now, prior to GIMOTI, how were these patients with diabetic gastroparesis treated? How does GIMOTI differ from other therapies that have been the go-to?
It's because it's a dose that you can get into your circulatory system without having to try to get it through the stomach, and the stomach may not comply. It's rather an atypical disease in that it can be blocking other treatments. We know that these patients take anywhere from 5, 10, sometimes 15 different medications for the various issues they may be dealing with. All of these can be affected by a non-compliant stomach. So by getting a dose on board through GIMOTI, we believe that it's more beneficial to the patient to have that knowledge that they can get treated. And the physicians that have been using it have been seeing outstanding outcomes from patients who have previously failed oral medications and being able to get some handle on this disease.
Metoclopramide, has it been approved for quite a while? Is this something that's been around? And if so, why is it taking so long for this alternative solution like GIMOTI to hit the market?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. It has been on the market since 1980. Metoclopramide is available in a oral pill form, and it's also available as an IV. And these patients, they do end up getting hospitalized, unfortunately, all too often. So they usually receive it through IV in the hospital, again, avoiding the GI tract. I guess the statement I would make about why did it take so long, well, there's a number of reasons. One is metoclopramide as a molecule has a known concerning side effect called tardive dyskinesia. And this is a movement disorder that can sometimes become a permanent thing that the patient has to deal with. It's really very uncommon, if not rare, for patients taking metoclopramide. It's far more common in products that are old neuroleptics, old drugs to treat schizophrenia and other things from the 1950s and 50s and 60s. Those medications tend to cause this. We believe that there's been sort of a dark cloud put around tardive dyskinesia and metoclopramide because some of the old studies that have been describing this described it as being a very common event to occur, but the most recent studies have shown it happens only in 0.1% of patients potentially have an incidence rate for tardive dyskinesia. Mm-hmm. We do believe that some physicians have been reticent to prescribing metoclopramide to treat this. And then the final piece to your question on why does it take so long for GIMOTI, well, this was approved just a couple of years ago during the middle of COVID, and unfortunately getting word out during COVID was extremely difficult. Physicians were not typically available. They were obviously very busy and concerned with other issues during the pandemic. But now that has abated, we're getting a lot more traction and let's just say awareness for the product out in the market space.
Have you collected any data that is associated with any potential side effects with GIMOTI? And what's the future for Evoke as far as, I guess, the next couple of years goes? And then give us a website where we can learn more.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, the tardive dyskinesia side effect profile is the one thing that we actually want to make sure we're aware of. To date, we have not seen any tardive dyskinesia for patients taking GIMOTI. And it was not also witnessed in any of the clinical trials that we ran, so we're talking about thousands of patients at this point. And with that, it heartens us in believing that perhaps there's some other benefit here that we haven't yet seen in terms of why that hasn't occurred. Of course, it's a rare event, so maybe it may take thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of patients before we see a case at all. But at this point, it's remained a very safe product overall. So after that, in terms of how patients can get in touch with it, well, of course, GIMOTIRx.com is a website. There's also DGP and Me, which is Diabetic Gastroparesis and Me, and talks a lot about patient symptoms and issues, diets, and other issues that they deal with. All those different components will be helpful in driving the patient more information and helping them understand where they can access the product. The product is only available through one specialty online pharmacy at this point. You can't get it at a CVS or your local pharmacy just yet. Is there anything that you'd like to add for our listeners? I just say that we hope that the patients who have diabetic gastroparesis out there understand that there is a new option for them. It has proven to be very helpful for a lot of people. We're trying to get the word out, but we're a small company and we're not spending giant amounts of money on advertising and all that kind of stuff. So we just want to make sure that they know that there are options out there and perhaps GIMOTI's for them. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Matthew. Hopefully you return and give us some updates. Thank you for your time, sir. You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Matthew D'Onofrio. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Health Professional Radio.